Hi, welcome to Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the show where we watch, discuss, and review every motherfucking horror movie on Netflix. I'm Steven. I'm here with my usual companions, Chris.
Hi there.
And Patrick.
Hi, it's good to be back.
Is it? I'm going to start off with some bad news right off the front, just to get this out of the way. I know our fans have been looking forward to seeing us at Motor City Nightmares. It has been rescheduled for July. Plan accordingly.
Too much plague in Michigan right now.
Due to the coronavirus.
Yeah, man, Captain Trips.
Because somebody, not going to name names, brought the virus home from Miami.
That's true. Florida did precede Michigan for coronavirus cases, so it is possible that I was patient zero for Michigan.
It jumped the bat to human to gator back to human species barriers and got Patrick. While he was biking through the Everglades.
Yeah. I was worried about that odd-looking gator that nipped me on the heels as I moved past.
Mm-hmm. And I wasn't... Maybe I shouldn't bring this up on the show, but I was going to say you are looking a little leathery. Like maybe you are developing a gator hide yourself.
Dude, that would be fucking sick. I mean, I'm like basically a Spider-Man villain now.
Yes, you are. I forgot your birthday, and this is how you're going to make me pay.
It's, this virus is unfortunate because it's been one of my dreams since I was a child and wanted to be a monster in the movies, to get bitten by a bat in real life. No joke. I romanticize the idea of that.
Bats are cute. I love bats.
They're cute, and even their bites are cute.
I wouldn't want to be bitten by a bat. I would like it to give me gentle licks like a dog.
Well, I was really into vampires as a child.
I wanted to be either a vampire or a werewolf, and I had kind of weird teeth. I had braces since. They were symmetrical, but kind of like fangs, and I thought like I was born to play one or the other.
I feel like I am naturally more of a vampire, but I would rather be a werewolf personally.
The thing I worry about with being a werewolf is
silver bullets.
Thankfully well, yes. Thankfully, I guess we have fast fashion now, so it wouldn't be so much of a problem. It's just all the clothes you'd go through.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
That's such a practical concern. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I want to know what happened to Bob Seger to make him surround himself with a silver bullet band.
All right. Well,
hey, we'll cover that in the movie I make with Bob Seger. Whatever the name of it was.
The Motor City Madman. Oh, that's Ted.
Fright Moves. Fright Moves.
Fright Moves, yeah.
That was going to be the movie. This is actually not something I just pulled out of my ass. This has been something I've talked about for a while.
Oh, the title too?
Yeah. Fright Moves is a Bob Seger-based horror anthology movie.
/ concert film.
Yes. It's like, the protagonist is like a guy, Bob Seger. It might actually be Bob Seger, but Bob Seger surrogate at least, riding through cross country on a motorcycle. He stops and encounters various spooky things along the way.
Black Cat Mandu.
Yeah, that kind of relate. Yeah, they all relate kind of to his songs.
I'm glad how often we managed to slip Seger references into this show. That shows our non-Michigan listeners just how fucking Michigan we are.
Yeah, even I'm not that Michigan. And the summer of Seger is long.
Yeah, and you know what?
Every summer's the summer of Seger.
Well, it's not summer, so shut the fuck up about Seger.
This is why people in Michigan love Seger. So there's a nostalgia Facebook group for where I live, and it's got
where everyone lives. There's one.
Well, yeah, where everyone you all have a nostalgic...
Or whatever you're into. But what do you mean where you live? Like specifically, what is the name of this group?
Specifically Monroe. It's called like Monroe Time Capsule or something.
Okay.
And there are pictures posted to this group of concert posters for Bob Seger playing at like a fucking bar like 5 miles from where I live. In the middle of fucking in LaSalle, in the middle of
in
fucking
LaSalle,
playing.
He played Luna Pier,
dude. Literally anyone who grew up in Michigan in Southeast Michigan who is now over the age of 50, if you mention Bob Seger to them, I swear to God, they will say, he played my, insert dance at high school, insert whatever mundane teenage activity.
Same with the Stooges.
Seger somehow played it. Oh, Seger was so much more like omnipresent, though, I feel like, than the Stooges.
It was like fucking $7 to see Bob Seger in some hole-in-the-wall bar in the middle of fucking nowhere.
That was a lot of money.
It was
back
fucking
then.
free. He played your high school dance. People talk about him playing their fucking graduations. Can you imagine? That's the real summer Seger.
I bet he sucked too, but like once he got famous, their memories had been altered over time, or they just like wanted the excuse to brag, like, yeah, I saw him before he was big.
Well, thanks for listening to Bob Seger Radio.
Yeah, every Bob Seger album on Apple Music.
Yeah.
Hey, though, to answer your question, Steven, you said, is it actually good to be back? And it is. I missed you guys. And also, you did an amazing episode last week.
Thank you.
Almost made me want to actually fucking watch Polaroid, even though it sounded terrible. But listening to you guys talking about it made it sound fun. Christine was great. But I have a quick fact check for you.
Oh, yeah.
Is this about Ansel Adams?
We have to make a retraction.
No.
Because I have a fact check too on myself.
Somebody, I forget who, said that the movie...
Me.
Chris said that it felt like middle-aged guys like trying to talk like teens talk. As it turns out, it was written by a woman.
What?
It was written by like a 40-year-old woman.
Mm-hmm.
Is she Danish?
I don't know.
Because the director isn't. I thought maybe this is like
Her name did not strike me as Danish.
cultural thing. Like
I
it's
think
just
she's
not
American.
translating to English very well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it could just... she is still older than the kids in the movie, but it is a she.
I mean, it's a bad script either way, but at least we know where it came from.
Yeah.
Wasn't great.
Anyway, good job on that episode, other than that.
My fact check is I was borderline incredulous about the quote about the SX70 or whatever the fuck it was, the Polaroid camera being used by Ansel Adams. Turns out Ansel Adams was a very big proponent of Polaroid cameras, and that one in particular.
That one in particular, the haunted one in particular. That's why
Not that one in particular, but that model.
That's why all the beautiful natural landscapes he shot are dying.
Wow, that's another podcast.
Yeah.
On this
Woo.
podcast, we're here to talk about a movie that I selected at the end of last 2 weeks episode, Girl on the Third Floor.
And we would ask why you selected it, but we know it's because of your deep passion for professional wrestling.
Of course.
I thought this movie was called The Gull on the Third Floor, and I thought it was like about the lighthouse or something.
What?
Like, yeah,
The gull
on the third floor.
Dude.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining the possibilities of a gull who, like, inhabits an entire floor of a house. Like, just lords himself over the inhabitants of the house.
It's like the Raven. But anyway, why did you really pick this, Steven?
Why did I really pick this? I wasn't like super excited to see this movie, but it was actually on the cover, like on a sidebar on the cover of either the first or second issue of the new Fangoria, and I read a set visit, really interesting interview with the director, who is a longtime producer. He's done movies like Cheap Thrills with Pat Healy. He produced the Jodorowsky's Dune documentary and a bunch of horror movies. He's been in the business for a couple of decades, and I mean, the story really grabbed me. It sounded intriguing that this was his first directorial effort after producing films for so many years. The one of the financiers of the film owned a house that had kind of a haunted history. It was a bordello, and two people had been murdered there, and they basically were shopping this around like, hey, we own this house, somebody write a movie about this. And it was also across the street from a church, like in this film. And I thought, how interesting. That, like, what a weird way to begin a film project.
Very creative.
I mean, and also...
Wait, so is that the house they used?
It's not the house they used,
Oh,
no.
okay. It just was the inspiration for the story.
So... I'm unclear on that. I read a couple of interviews today that had conflicting information, but either way, I was at one point writing something very similar, and as I was reading this article, I was thinking like, ooh, I'm inspired by this, but I can't use that because they've already done it.
So I mean, the basic setup is there's a man who moves into a creepy old house in advance of his pregnant wife, who's still busy with work, I guess, and can't come to the house quite yet, joining him, and he's working on renovating the house, and it's clearly haunted. He's clearly a piece of shit who's cheating on his wife, and the house seems to not take too well to that. And the man is played by Steven's favorite professional wrestler, CM Punk.
Mm-hmm.
In his feature film debut, I think.
Yeah, it is.
So we can, I guess, get right into that.
Yeah, because, I mean, you just you covered most of the movie right there. And we can get into some of the details.
It's a fairly simple concept.
It's a very simple concept. But yeah, very interesting. I really... I don't think he was listed or like mentioned as CM Punk in the article I read. And when the poster for the movie came out, I was like, oh yeah, I heard of that. And I was like, what a fucking weird credit. Like, what's his actual name?
David Brooks or something. Well, not David Brooks. That's it's... I'll look it up.
Whatever it is, it was like, blank quotes CM Punk blank. I was like, oh God. Like, immediately this looks like a direct-to-video movie.
Philip Jack Brooks. I think he's credited in this movie as Phil Brooks. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was like, oh God, this is like somehow that's not a good look for a poster to have somebody with a, nickname like along with their original
Curtis
name.
50 Cent Jackson.
Yeah.
What do you got against Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, Steven?
Again, that's another podcast. We're gonna have a lot of spinoffs here soon. And I didn't know. I was like, why? I was like, CM Punk, is he like? I mean, it's just like such a douchey name. I was like, oh God, is he like a punk rocker? And he's...
So I don't watch WWE. Have you ever seen CM Punk as a wrestler?
And I actually just in the last year or so have become sort of fascinated actually with professional wrestling, but I haven't really watched that much, and I've never actually seen CM Punk do his thing. Yeah, I mean, so I don't know what his personality is.
He's a recent WWE star, so
is he?
Not from the stuff that you want to watch.
Okay. I know he's written.
Is there
comics.
stuff I want to watch?
He's written comics recently, which is sort of interesting.
What genre?
I'm trying to remember. It's something superhero. I'm trying to remember what he wrote a Drax the Destroyer from the Guardians of the Galaxy miniseries, and I think there's like Drax does some wrestling shit in that, which I mean all makes sense since Batista plays Drax in the movies.
Yeah.
So CM Punk, I know him mostly from his brief stint in the UFC, where he was going to transition from pro wrestling to the UFC, which some other people have done. I'm thinking of Brock Lesnar. There might be other people who have done that. Some other people have gone from the UFC to WWE, even though there's not a ton of overlap in the skill set. And CM Punk decided he wanted to make an MMA debut. He had a UFC fight. He might have done some smaller circuit MMA before that. I don't know. But he got pretty fucked up in his first fight. And then he came back and he got fucked up again, and he will probably never fight in the UFC again. But at least he tried. He went out of his comfort zone. And so then him trying to make a transition to acting, I can respect that too. And, I don't know. You don't really get... He seems like a fine guy. I don't know. I
have no fucking clue.
I found his performance in this movie really interesting because at times, I mean, he has a very expressive face and a very rich voice. There are some very awkward line readings in this movie.
Yes.
But for the most part, I actually really liked his performance, and I think I figured out what he was doing. He's basically channeling Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say.
He could do a spot-on impression of young Bruce Campbell. Even his voice, the cadence of his voice is
absolutely.
Like, if you just, like, a couple of times I closed my eyes and I was like, that's Ash. That's totally Ash. And...
strong chin, Bruce, kind of that like eye poppy thing.
And in the latter half of the movie, he's even dressed like Ash. He's got the jean shirt on and everything. It had to be intentional. He's got the haircut.
Okay.
And there is we'll get into this probably more in the spoiler room, but there is a moment where this movie for a few minutes just becomes an Evil Dead 2 riff. I mean, there are definitely touches of it throughout with all the ridiculous amounts of fluids and blood and cum and stuff that's spraying at him and all around the house. That's very Sam Raimi to me, but I don't know. I really like it. And Bruce Campbell I read this today, has given CM Punk his blessing to play Ash if there's a future installment.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, that really changes my perception of the movie because I think you're right. I didn't notice that. To me, it looked like just someone making an awkward transition to screen acting from
it's don't get me wrong, it's awkward, but there are moments when I think he's fucking perfect.
I thought his mannerisms and his face and his acting range reminded me of like Steve from Blue's Clues.
What? If Steve got jacked and covered in
Steve
tats?
got jacked and covered in, which he may be now. I don't know. He did become a punk rocker.
What?
Yeah, you didn't hear about that?
No.
That's ancient news. That's news from before the dawn of man.
Wow.
Yeah, that's old news, man.
The fucking mammoths were talking about that, Steven.
You can
Wow,
research
okay.
that one on your own. But, so...
For the record, I did not know that either.
So, I've made some movies, and Patrick and I have made some movies, too.
We made a third of a movie.
We made a third of a movie, but,
It's more than a third.
If you're a young independent filmmaker and you're interested in making movies around your town, you're probably going to go to your local theater people to get some actors. And what we've found is that when you pull theater actors, stage actors into a movie, you sometimes get peculiar line readings because they're used to performing on a stage and not having the subtlety. On screen you can say something with one little flit of your eyebrow, and they're used to projecting and pantomiming and all that stuff. And I was like watching CM Punk and trying to make sense of his face and not realizing that it might be a Bruce Campbell.
I think it was,
Tribute.
it took me maybe like 20, 25 minutes to like, oh, fuck, that's Ash. But I think it was intentional all throughout. That said, even if you view it through that lens, there's some really awkward moments with his performance.
I just thought it was someone, not just a stage actor, but an arena actor.
Yeah. I want to jump in here because I was primed to, so I knew very little about this movie. I didn't really know the premise even. I did see something about the fact that CM Punk's performance had been acclaimed. So I was like, oh,
what?
That sounds sort of interesting.
Acclaimed?
Yeah.
Wow, I haven't
Or
heard
was,
that.
or was praised. I don't know. It's in the first paragraph of the Wikipedia article about it. So that was the only frame of reference I had. So I was prepared for something impressive out of him. I was not extremely impressed. The Bruce Campbell thing came across mostly just in his face and his general demeanor, and not necessarily his acting ability, which is a
Bruce
term
Campbell's
that I
not a
would
great
apply
actor,
very
though.
loosely to Bruce Campbell. Yeah, I mean, I feel like CM Punk could turn up the camp factor and probably be a great Ash.
Oh,
but
he'd
I was
be a
not.
great anybody. I would watch a million movies with the CM Punk, but just leaning into camp more.
Yeah,
He
but
could be a star, man.
I was not impressed with him in this movie that mostly seems to be fairly I mean, it is over the top. There's a lot of over the top shit, but I don't think it intends to be a funny movie.
No, it seems to take itself very seriously.
When he cleans up a whole bunch of drywall and goes outside and is trying to put it in the trash can and says to absolutely no one, I should have got a dumpster.
Yeah.
It's such and I mean, it's very stagey the way Chris just put it, but that's in the writing. That was written in the script.
I read that,
and he
okay,
had to perform that line.
By that point in the movie, I was thinking of the famous, and I actually rewound it to see if they had to see if they'd done this. But when he said that, I was like, oh my god, this is the famous work shed moment from Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2. I was like, you know what?
Wait, what is that?
Where I don't remember the exact moment in the movie. There's a moment where Ash, they did some ADR and his mouth isn't even moving, and he says work shed because they thought they needed motivation for him. They needed clear motivation for him to go to the work shed, and it's become this iconic sort of camp thing. And I thought you know what? I have a feeling this is just bad screenwriting and bad acting, but if I'm going to make this Ash connection, this is totally analogous. And I just found it kind of funny.
It seemed to me like they just planned to shoot a scene where he was throwing out drywall, and then they realized that it was ridiculous because they only had a little trash can. And so they just threw that line in there to kind of address the issue.
Yeah.
And that checks out because there's a lot of just kind of underthought, undercooked stuff in this, small stuff that I couldn't believe actually wound up in the final cut. I mean, there's a moment where a character gets hit under the hit in the eye with a hammer, and for some reason spends 3 to 4 minutes crawling on the floor to get away from the person who hit him. I'm like,
with a baseball-sized hole.
I'm like, you got hit in the eye. I think you can still walk. What's going on here? It's a lot of weird shit.
Wait, you thought he should still be able to walk?
Yeah.
When his head has just been caved in? I thought your argument was that he would be immobile. His brain just got smashed.
I don't know if the hammer went that far in. It was weird.
That was an extreme wound. The way they did that makeup, that was a horrifying scene.
Well, the wound also wasn't like where it looked like he got hit. There's just some like kind of like murky, clunky stuff in this.
If my head was that caved in, I do not think I would be walking.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this movie's rough around the edges, but why don't we talk about what Patrick gave a very succinct and accurate overview of what this film is like, but why don't we kind of get into the nitty gritty? Some of the character stuff, some of the gooiness, the effects.
Here's some nitty gritty I'd like to get into.
Okay,
the attire. So CM Punk spends much of this movie renovating. There's so many shots of CM Punk just fucking taking a hammer to drywall.
Sure, and
then later his friend shows up and they're taking a hammer to drywall. CM Punk, most of the time while he's doing this, is dressed in like a nice Oxford shirt and like tight-fitting chinos. Like he looks like he has stepped out of the J. Crew catalog.
And like bare feet.
To demolish this home.
And then his friend has like a fucking like, man bag and shit
when
too.
Milo shows up, same thing. Milo's got like the nice Oxford. He does roll up the sleeves to do the housework.
He's gonna get dirty. It's gonna get sweaty.
Yeah, but I was just like, what an interesting costuming choice. I'm sorry that I'm going just like full June Diane Raphael.
No, go for it. I mean, there's a lot in this movie that like
puzzled by that choice.
There's a lot in this movie that's like, this was, I don't know. I mean, I'm baffled. I've only seen 2 movies that the director Stephen Travis, whatever the fuck it is.
I didn't pay attention.
I feel like it was the first thing you said, but I'll check.
It's one or the other. I've only seen 2 movies he's produced, and they're okay. Cheap Thrills was pretty solid, though not really my style. A little too nasty for me. And Jodorowsky's Dune is an amazing film. I thought he would have a better sense of like the basics of putting a film together, not necessarily the moving the camera around and stuff, but yeah, like costuming is one thing in particular that I figured like he would have that nailed down.
And it kind of, I don't know. I mean, all right, if you can be charitable about it because knowing what we kind of find, because this movie started, I was like, I don't know who this guy is, why he's here, what he's doing. I'm like, is he a contractor? Okay, all right, it's his house. Okay, he's renovating, I guess. But yeah, he doesn't look like he's there to work. But also we learned his backstory, is in white collar finance.
Right, he's King Don.
I guess his backstory, which is touched on very briefly, is that he, I guess, was a white collar criminal in finance, running a Ponzi scheme or something like that.
Yeah,
right. And it's interesting, like when you say that, I was almost like, oh, that's a spoiler, because it comes so late in the movie. It comes at like the point where all the other spoiler stuff is, and it's kind of odd that they withhold that information because it's hinted at for a long time as if you're going to discover something bigger and more. I mean, not that the information is revealed isn't damning, but it's like, oh yeah, I mean, that's about what I expected from what we've been told so far. It's not like oh gasp, that's what happened.
I read the description on IMDb, which I read it like before I watched the movie just to see what was out there. I'm always interested in like a movie like this is independently financed that doesn't get a wide release, like what's going to draw, how do people find out about it if they're not reading Fangoria or Bloody Disgusting or whatever. And there was so much information in the first 3 sentences of the review that I was like, an hour into the movie, like, what? Am I watching the same movie they were describing? Because it's all about like the character and things that happen in the film. And it does feel like a lot of stuff that should have been at least implied early on wasn't there. And it doesn't really have any impact when it finally is revealed later.
So a lot of the early stuff was boring to me just because I didn't really have a handle on this character or what was going on. And I mean, you talk about the costuming. Maybe, I mean, if you want to be charitable, you can say, well, the reason he doesn't look like a workman is because he's a white collar guy who doesn't really know what the fuck he's doing. Well, also,
but he seems to know what he's doing very well.
He also doesn't look like an office type though either, because he's covered in tattoos,
including a very gratuitous Pepsi product placement at one point in the film.
I don't know if
it is tattoos.
It's like his left shoulder is just a giant Pepsi logo, and like there's a moment where the camera seems to linger on
probably his actual tattoo.
No, it is his actual tattoo for sure, and I'm sure he had like a Pepsi sponsorship, and this maybe kind of milked that.
And then he's in the town. He putters around the town. He checks out the local bars. We don't really understand why, and I still don't understand why, other than to encounter some token characters who are like, you stay away from that house now.
You queer?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they make a point of saying that the house isn't kind to straight men in particular.
Yeah, and I wish the reason I was saying fuck earlier, I don't know if anybody heard me multiple times, is that I actually took notes.
Yeah, I was going to say which time
movie, and I don't have them with me, but I do remember that I wrote down at the end of the film that I was just as confused. I was more confused about that line by the end of the film than I was when it was said originally.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in the spoiler room, but
yeah, I mean,
it's very weird. It feels so much in this movie. It happens without a clear motivation just so we can get information. But it's not like your typical exposition either. Like, it's weird that, like, you would expect that with how clunky the script is, you would expect more of characters just kind of saying things that are very on the nose to get details out of the way. But this movie is, like, very conservative with the way it deals that information.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I actually liked this movie because I felt for a long time like it kind of showed a lot more than it told, and it didn't seem very exposition heavy, and people would just say things that seemed to refer to information that was already established between them, and they didn't feel the need to explain it to us. And I appreciated that. I appreciated that it jumped right into the action. Like, we've just got this guy, we don't know anything about him, he's alone, and all of a sudden he's just ripping a wall apart to fix this like weird like black shit that's bubbling out of the wall. And I'm like, okay, you're throwing me right into some kind of weird stuff, and I'm slowly figuring out who this guy is, basically on my own. And I liked all that, and then weirdly enough, and we'll obviously discuss the details of this more in the spoiler room, but what frustrated me was how it attempted to explain a lot of stuff at a very late point in the film, at which point I already didn't care and would have preferred that they just left me with some of the mystery and lack of knowing that I already had.
Yeah,
I love I love what this movie sets up and where it's going. I love a lot of the sort of thematic content and even the characters, because it just felt kind of like Polaroid. I felt like this was maybe like a second draft, and it needed like 2 or 3 more drafts to really clearly communicate what is going on. So, you know, watching this movie from the beginning, you get the sense that this character, our protagonist, is a piece of shit. I mean, like pretty early on. But it's interesting.
Well, it's pretty early on. I don't even know if it's a spoiler. You can correct me if I'm wrong, to say he cheats on his wife in the first 20 minutes.
I mentioned that in my summary.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what is like interesting to me about that is that like the movie is like the tone isn't clear enough that like for a minute or a few minutes or maybe 15 or 20 minutes, I was like, I don't know if this movie hates this character as much as I do right now.
Yeah.
Because I also don't know much about his history. And again, a lot of that information comes much later. None of it is like super revelatory, but I feel like it's stuff I wish I had known before he starts making really terrible choices.
It reminded me a bit of Corbin Nash, not just because the main character was Corbin Nash adjacent, especially with all the MMA stuff and the toxic masculinity stuff, but also like Corbin Nash was a movie where it's like, oh yeah, remember when you like commit that like racially violent police brutality thing or something, and it's like, yeah bro, and it's like, how am I supposed to feel about this? This is the movie want me to feel about this.
I didn't wish anything had been revealed earlier. I feel like I knew this person and his sleaziness, and I was not, like I said, I wasn't shocked when they revealed any more details later in the movie.
I wasn't shocked either. I just I didn't have like, because the film is like, I mean, it looks good, and it's, you know, for who's involved, it's pretty decently acted, but it's like a little bit tonally confused and a little bit there's some kind of clunky stuff at the script level where I was like, okay, I actually like this. And I think I know where this movie's going, but like I'm not totally sure that I'm right. And it wasn't like a sense of mystery, like, oh, like maybe things are not what they seem. It was more I was feeling like I don't know if this was like directed and written clearly enough for what they're trying, what the intent is. It all ended up it ended up coming together for me, but it didn't feel like a very like assuredly crafted film.
I found myself pretty bored, but bored in a different way than I usually am. You know, we didn't get
What a sentence.
What are the shades of boredom for
Well,
you?
My biggest pet peeve is these scenes where it's like something spooky is going to happen, so we got to watch the guy walk through the house in the dark for, 10 minutes or whatever. That doesn't happen in this movie.
Yeah, that was all of Polaroid.
That was all of Polaroid. It's none of this movie. This movie, you see the guy, there's always something interesting happening, I guess, but like I was waiting for the movie to like set up its premise. I was like, what's going on in this movie? And I'm not sure if it ever really does. He's like, the premise is he's in the house, there's shit like coming out of the walls and the drain pipes, and he's like,
no, it's not.
Fuck.
It's not shit. It's cum and it's blood.
and tar.
No, it's puss.
and all
That's
kinds
a
of stuff.
little throwback for our longtime listeners there.
And then there's some kind of I was getting I think I can mention this without spoilers. I was getting some Silent Hill vibes out of this movie, and I think
need to fucking play Silent Hill.
Deliberate, because you have a character who's got these demons in his past. He's got guilt on his soul. He's not a good guy. He's in this house. There's all these mirrors, as if to say the house is reflecting things back at him.
A lot of mirrors.
And there's all these kind of abstract manifestations of what might be his own anxieties. Like, the guy clearly, I wouldn't have to say clearly because it's debatable, but the guy is presented to, maybe be too into sex, right? Because he's like trying to sext his pregnant wife, then he goes straight to the porn site, then he goes straight to cheating on his wife.
Yeah,
right?
Master Daddy, I think, is the porn site. So I took note of that.
Which was
or
great.
Daddy Master, one or the other. It's ridiculous.
And so you get these kind of like sexual things coming out of the house, and these holes in the wall that look like sphincters and stuff. And this is all very Silent Hill stuff. The kind of idea of a physical location reflecting your anxieties back on you in an abstract way. The one ghoul thing that shows up was very Silent Hill to me as well.
That was I've not played the Silent Hill games, I've not seen the movie, but I'm familiar with the iconography. Yes, the titular girl on the third floor, is very Silent Hill.
Yes. And so that primed me to kind of expect a certain thing from where it was going, and I don't think I really ended up getting it. And so I was just kind of confused the whole time about what this movie was about, when the story was going to kick in, when I was going to start getting really invested in like the A to B to C of what was going on.
So I have two things to say about this. I was not bored by this movie at all. I was completely drawn in. I finally checked the time, like I think maybe an hour in, and I was like, oh shit, there's only like a half hour of this left. I was just really drawn in by the constant flow of just weird shit happening, and there's a lot of gross, like really cool little practical effects in this movie, and I was fairly consistently like, oh, that's weird, that's gross, all right, you have my attention. And the second thing I was going to say is I feel like we should describe the girl on the third floor, because what a weird creation. And they very cleverly withhold her. Like, she's seen in just the briefest of glimpses for a long time, where you're like, fuck, what was that? Like,
if you've played Silent Hill 2 or are familiar with it, it would be described as a bobblehead nurse with a gash up her face that has like teeth running up to her forehead and like a peg leg.
I have to say something.
Does she have
about
a
this.
peg leg?
She has odd limbs. I don't know if she has a peg leg, but I feel like she has like a stump instead of an arm, or a stump instead of a leg.
She is seen so fleetingly, even when you really get into the shit. And you do get some more close-up shots of her.
We spent some more time with her as it goes on.
I feel like it's like the blind man and the elephant or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like everybody could describe this character in a different way, and I kind of love that.
Reading reviews, I found it very interesting, because it like I just kind of glanced over a few just to see what people thought or whatever, like I always do with these movies, and every description was wildly different, to the point where I was like, wait, what did I even see?
Yeah.
I have to say though, Fangoria kind of fucked up. I think it was Fangoria. I hope it wasn't somewhere else.
Steven's about to put Fangoria on blast.
On blast. I think it was Fangoria that had a pretty explicit picture of what she looked like in it. I think we can now do corrections and omissions on this show. We broke that seal at the beginning of this episode. So if I'm wrong, I will look this up later, and I will comment on the next episode. But yeah,
They're
felt
gonna
like
pull our classified ad.
Something it's only in print. I mean, it's something that like I think would have made the movie slightly more intriguing to me if I didn't know like what the titular girl looked like.
I was ready for a good old-fashioned succubus story, and we don't get it.
We get a little bit of
we
one.
It takes me halfway there, and then it says, nope, this ain't a succubus story.
Living on a prayer.
Yeah. Been a while since I've seen a good succubus story. I don't know if I've ever seen a good succubus
I don't think
story.
we need a succubus story in this
No, not in this time.
time. Yeah, no. And I was actually worried the movie was going to go there for a while.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Once I got the point that like, oh, the house is reflecting his demons back at him, and it's not like the house trying to, whatever. We'll get into it later. But there was a moment where I was like, oh God, please, especially after like the weird line about like, you queer, and like gay people don't do too well in that house. That's not what he said.
Straight people.
Straight people don't do well in that house.
I want to see. I want to see
worried.
the prequel where he figured that out, because like he's sitting across the street watching all these horrible things happen to straight people, and then like a gay couple moves in, and they're just having a great time. They're having cookouts. They're raising kids. I want to see that story.
Yeah, I want to talk about later again in the spoiler room. I feel like I've said that a billion times, like what that means to me. But it is interesting that the house seems to like, it seems to kind of like suss out and choose who it's going to fuck with. And I'm interested in like the mechanisms of that, the rules of that.
It fucks with shitty men, clearly.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. Are we ready to review this damn thing and explore?
I think we should, because like
we're gonna have a lot to talk about in the spoiler room.
we might be heavier on the spoiler room than usual episodes, but like I feel like there's not much that we can say without like really getting into it, other than like, this dude's shitty. He cheats on his wife. He's got a weird neighbor. He lives across from a Presbyterian church. He's got kind of a neighbor who seems to know more than she's letting on. And there's just a lot
weird
of fucking
character.
gooey shit going on in this movie before things get real. I mean, there's a lot of cum.
I thought Nickelodeon produced this movie for a minute.
There's a whole there's a lot of gack,
a lot of slime.
Foam. There's a hole in the wall that simultaneously looks like a dick and a vagina.
Flubber
It's
everywhere.
Feels very much like a
flubber. Those little balls.
Those little balls are
Those
marbles.
are marbles.
The
dude.
marbles. It's flubber.
They're not. They don't behave like flubber at all.
Well, they kind of.
All right. Like at least two things.
All right, two things.
Jesus,
One.
at least two.
One, Cooper, my favorite character in the fucking movie. There's a dog named Cooper, which is a dumb name for a dog, but this dog was great. He was beautiful.
Should have named the dog CM Punk.
He was a smart dog. He was also a great actor. And just fascinating watching him like move through different rooms of the house, and so many times he like knows what's going on. He like barks
he knows
to tell
CM
you
Punk
what,
is a piece
tell
of
you
shit.
what's
He's kind
up.
of the moral compass of this movie.
He really is, and that's why I was like invested in him almost as the protagonist. At a certain point, I was kind of wishing that the final act would just be fucking Cooper, like just a silent. Final act. It's like that issue of Hawkeye. Yeah, just like the pizza dog arc.
Movie.
Yes.
Better movie.
Yeah. This time it's Patrick rewrites the movie, and it's just the final act is the dog.
because we almost get that kind of narrative shift, but with the dog being the hero at the end, all by himself, silent, no dialogue.
Yes. Ooh, I want to write this movie.
Maybe seeing the same things we actually see at the end of this movie.
Yes.
But it's just a dog.
Yes. So much better.
Is one of the other things that you want to get to before the spoiler room the wife, or the way that her character is set up? Because I feel like, again, this movie is like kind of confused, but I think I know what it was intending to do now, having completed it. But I feel like she's set up to be kind of a shrew or a shrike.
She's one of these every horror movie on Netflix characters, a woman whose character for most of this movie can best be described as pregnant.
She's pregnant, and you better be working on that fucking kitchen.
Yeah.
That's her biggest concern with this house. And I feel like she's set up to be an annoyance and to be someone that like I worried that the movie was gonna be like, fuck yeah, he's cheating on her, she's awful, she's ruining his life. And it felt like it was like towing the line for me for a minute there, but things definitely do change. Do we want to review this now, guys? Because I feel like we're kind of getting in the weeds here, and I'd like to be able to talk a little bit more openly.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
Great.
Who wants to go first?
Can I go first again?
Yeah, Steven.
Steven loves to be the first to say screw it.
Cue it or screw it?
I'm gonna give it a cue it.
Oh.
I enjoyed this movie. I gave it some slack because this guy had never directed a movie before he produced, but it's it touches on a lot of sweet spots for me. One, there's almost no CGI in this movie. Apparently, there's only one shot that uses CGI. There is a boatload of wicked, nasty, gruesome, disgusting practical effects in this movie. There's one sequence involving marbles that we're going to talk about in the spoiler room that is like one of the... It's most I've cringed or looked away from the screen since Gerald's Game. It has kind of a Brian Yuzna, Stuart Gordon, Screaming Mad George kind of like 80s like gross out vibe to it that I was pretty into.
I got exactly 50% of the references you just made.
So one of them halfway? Because there were 3.
No, you said Brian Yuzna, Stuart Gordon, Screaming George something,
Screaming
80s
George.
Horror. And I know 80s horror, and I know
they're all
Stuart
80s
Gordon.
Horror. We'll talk later. Take you to school.
Take you out behind the gym.
It's the script is kind of clunky. I think it all kind of works in the end, but I was interested. CM Punk's performance basically as Ash was very entertaining to me. Not a perfect movie, but I was never bored. It succeeded in grossing me out. I appreciate the thematic ideas that are going on in this movie, even if I don't think they work perfectly. So cue it. If you end up deciding you want to watch something that's like really, it's not perfect, but it's pretty fucked up and pretty gruesome, but also has a message, check it out. That was one of my more rambling reviews.
Message. It's a message movie.
We'll get into it. It's a message movie with a capital M. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. There's a lot to like in this movie, but I'm going to give it a screw it.
Wow.
This movie does a lot of things well, or almost well. Just at the end of the day, not enough of it connected with me. I would be interested in seeing the next movie that this director makes. I would not be interested in going back in time and telling myself I should watch this movie or put it in my queue. And this conversation has kind of enhanced my respect for the movie, I think, and I look forward to maybe appreciating it even more once we discuss your interpretations of the themes. For me, there just wasn't enough for me to latch on to until, what I did like and what I was emotionally invested in, it was too little too late by that point. So, screw it. Sorry.
Just out of boredom, mostly. Because I'm just asking because I feel like I haven't really heard why screw it in particular.
Yeah, basically just boredom. The characters were not connecting. I couldn't really get a read on how I was supposed to feel about anybody. These scenarios, I couldn't really figure out what the conflict was. I still am not sure what the conflict was.
I'll second that.
Interesting, abstract stuff, but what effects are good. Some of the subplots were interesting, but what did it all add up to? I'm still not sure. Just kind of forgettable for me at the end of the day. But most people I think would find something interesting to take away from this or something they liked. It's just making a recommendation as myself for myself. Can't go above a screw it. Sadly, Patrick.
Yeah, I kind of just would echo to a large degree what you all said. I would give it a cue it. It's a weird mishmash. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily fit together here.
It's
a bit of a monster mash. There's some stuff that works.
Bash.
There's some stuff that works really well. Like, as I've said already, the practical effects. It is really creepy. There are some like genuinely cringy moments in the good sense of cringy, like you don't want to look at the screen because it's horrifying and makes you want to jump out of your skin. CM Punk's performance is just such an interesting beast. I'm so fascinated by the fact that we shared this Bruce Campbell assessment, Stephen, and also that it turns out that Bruce Campbell himself somehow has endorsed him to play Ash. I would love to see that. I would love to see CM Punk adapt this weird and not extraordinarily naturalistic acting style to something more campy, and I think an Evil Dead movie would be perfect for that. It doesn't fit that well in this movie for me and felt very jarring at a lot of times.
Yes, I agree.
And as I've already mentioned, like there's just some plotting and exposition stuff, especially late in the movie, that I was not thrilled with and thought were kind of poor choices, especially given the more reserved way that it started off. So I don't know. Yeah, just a weird hodgepodge of different shit going on, and some of it's very good and other parts aren't necessarily bad, but just weigh it down a bit in a way that makes it hard for me to enthusiastically recommend.
All right, so we've got 2 Cue It's and a Screw It. We're going to take a little break. I wish we had a third floor to go up to, but we don't, so you know where we're going, down to the spoiler room. We're going to spoil everything. Back in a minute. All right, welcome back. We are down here in the spoiler room. There may or may not be bodies behind the drywall now. I'm just a little worried after seeing this movie.
I just washed my hands, so I'm not worried at all. I know I'm safe.
Guys, don't worry. I'm over here in the corner. I've got my Oxford shirt on. I'm just fucking ripping drywall out to check for anything that might be back behind the walls.
Man, he fucks this house up. In the third act of this movie, or the end of the second
movie.
act. Yeah, but like really toward the end, like he starts to get like super fucking freaked out and paranoid, and he has gone to like every single wall, multiple spots on each wall in the house, and peeled back after he's done all this work, he's peeled back the wallpaper and he's hammering and he's sticking a little camera in.
Yeah,
to
he's got
see
the
what's
snake.
down in there. He's got a snake. Is that real?
Solid snake.
Is that a thing you can just hook into your phone?
I mean, I'm sure it is at this point.
They have that.
Why he would have that, I don't know. I mean, I guess he could have just ordered it like one day delivered.
It's good for
Amazon.
checking drains and stuff. I mean, it's feasible that you would bring it with your kit if you were rehabbing a house, but probably you'd bring like a drill first, or the stuff
why
that
the fuck would he?
The stuff that Milo gives him a hard time for not having.
This white collar criminal. Why would he think to have this?
I've had so many genuine 2 things to say about this moments tonight, but I actually have 2 things to say right now. One, CM Punk, and this is related to nothing, it's apropos of nothing, but CM Punk, and is this an acting choice? Is this just how he does this in real life? I was really bothered by how he holds the phone when he's talking to his wife on FaceTime. He holds that motherfucker out at arm's length. Like he stretches out his arm as far as it will go to talk to his wife on FaceTime.
Here's a moment oh my God. This is one of those moments where I'm like, oh my God, like they clearly just, they didn't have the time. They weren't thinking about it. But there's a moment where he's got the phone held out and he's talking to his wife on FaceTime or whatever. But he says, she's like, how's it coming along? And he's like, look at this. And he's touching the wall and feeling like the new paint job, but he doesn't flip the camera setting around. He's still looking at her and talking to her while he's doing this. She has no idea. She probably can't even see that.
But you can never tell. They never show the picture in picture to show which way the camera's pointed.
But he doesn't do anything differently with the phone. He's still doing that awkward thing where it's like as far out like a human selfie stick, and he's touching the wall.
The whole premise of the video conversations is kind of dumb, but it's there practically because we need to kind of get to know this wife character. We need to know what she looks like, and then we need her to like spot the other woman running around the background of the house when they're on the call.
Yeah, just the choice of the way he held the phone was so interesting. Maybe they were trying to make a statement that he's holding her at arm's length, but I mean it was very awkward.
You're probably right.
The other thing, and we've talked about moments that made us cringe in this movie. Here's one that made me cringe that probably makes no one else at all cringe. Was when he, we talked about how he like hacks up this part of the wall. It has this, it looks burnt and it's sort of like seeping, and he's trying to replace it. And he puts a whole new piece of drywall in, and like my inner OCD was like, oh, this is nice. He cut out a really nice hole. He's putting in a perfectly sized piece. Like, this is going to look great. And then he paints it and it doesn't paint correctly. And especially because I'm thinking about buying a house, I'm just like, I'm going to have so many moments like this where I like try and fix something. And I think I've done it perfectly. And then the paint just looks weird and you can still see the outline of the new piece of drywall. And I was just like, just pissed me off so much.
I did have similar anxiety because, I mean, he's like fucking... He's indiscriminately pounding holes in walls and looking around for secret passages. And I'm like, oh, God, how are you going to cover that up so that, well, one, you can never forget what you saw there. And covering up isn't going to do any good. You know, like after like 20 minutes, I'm like, I don't think any sane person could ever remain in this house after what he's found. Yeah. But also, there's like, you're going to see the physical reminders too, unless you just put up another weird-ass mirror to cover it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny because when you look at CM Punk, especially once he takes his shirt off, you think, well, here's a guy like Corbin Nash who punches holes in drywall. But it turns out he actually repairs holes in drywall. But by the end of the movie, he's punching holes in drywall again.
So I mean,
can't escape who you are, man.
Let's catch up on all the fucking crazy details. Like, so his friend Milo comes to help him with the house. Milo finds out that he's cheated.
Well, let's back up just a second because I mean the first real key plot point.
Back up to like the 25-minute timestamp.
Yeah, it's like this neighbor comes over, this hottie comes over,
Sarah.
She
has a name.
She has a name. Does she? Is she
funny
real?
Because he does forget her name.
He does forget her name too.
Just later.
She is real. We find out her entire backstory. Like 2 minutes before the end of the movie.
She's a ghost? Is she real? Is she a projection of the house? We never know.
I mean, she's clearly not like flesh and blood.
I guess. I don't know. But yeah, so she comes over and she's like, just really overtly hitting on him right off the bat. They make passionate love.
We don't know if it's passionate.
We don't see the love being made.
It was hot.
It was better than she expected.
That's what she said.
And then, was hot.
Again, I don't have my notes, but I'm amazed at my recall. He says, and I feel like I've heard this line in a movie before, but with how clunky this movie is, it really like rang differently for me. As they're kissing and she's about to leave, he's like, that dress looked better on the floor. And I'm like, what are you saying about her right now?
That's cruel.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Like, that dress looked better on the floor. It sounds like he's saying you look like shit in that dress.
But she just sticks around.
I disagree, but we don't need to get into it.
The way it was delivered was super weird. Anyway,
she keeps coming around, though. She won't go away, and he tries to distance himself because she's being kind of weird, and he's guilty about cheating on his wife.
This is a trope we've seen their entire movies about. This is a Fatal Attraction sort of scenario.
Yeah, and so by the time you get to the point where she's like killing the dog, I'm like, is the theme of this movie bitches be crazy? Like, is that where they're going with this? Is this, is this Michael Douglas movie?
And again, this movie, like, somehow it manages to not be entirely clear about what it's about and not be like an art film, but also leave me intrigued enough to follow it while still being a bit concerned about how it's all going to pan out. It's a very odd balance this movie strikes, but it does it well. It did it well enough for me where I was never like, oh my God, I think this is going to end up being a garbage movie that has a garbage message or a garbage take on humanity or masculinity or female sexuality or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a movie that wants to be feminist and wants to tweak the Fatal Attraction, bitches be crazy kind of formula, but it's also a movie that I don't think has any real perspective or any real empathy with its female characters. Like, it wants to take this sort of hard right turn in the final act, and we still haven't really explained this, but the wife shows up and becomes the hero of the movie at a very late point in the movie, and we also are brought to empathize with Sarah at a very late point in the movie. But none of these things are necessarily, they're not turns that really feel justified or really backed up. Like, they don't feel very substantial, and it feels more like somebody mapped out the way they wanted the themes and your perception of the movie to proceed and didn't really think that deeply about the characters or who they were.
100%. I couldn't have articulated it better. That was my problem with the movie, is I understood eventually. I mean, it took some time and it took some like having faith in the movie based on what I don't know. Probably just the constant onslaught of weirdness and gooiness. I knew where it was headed. I understood the themes. I just don't think they were very well executed. I feel like it was just a sketch for what the writer-director wanted. He wrote it too, right? Anybody confirm that? I think he did write it too.
Yes. Yes, he did. Wrote, directed, and produced.
Yeah. So
coughing over there, bro?
Got the COVID.
So it's very visual. I do appreciate that it shows more than it tells. I think it could have told a little more, though. Rare, I'll say that about a film. Very rare.
Told more. Well, told.
He did write and direct it, yes.
Told something different, maybe. I don't know. We learn a lot of detail about the sordid history of the house, which is quite irrelevant to the spiritual arc of the movie.
I disagree with that.
Oh, really?
Well, let's just get into it. So the house used to be a brothel or a bordello. I don't know what the difference is between those two things. And
cat house. You know what we mean. You know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
house of ill repute.
Ill repute.
House of ill repute.
Just like EHMON Studios South and North.
Ooh.
Yeah, it reminds me of a great Simpsons episode.
Which one?
There's an episode about like the brothel in Springfield.
Oh shit!
Yeah, it's a really good one. Anyway, so yeah, it used to be a brothel, and it was shut down, and there was a missing girl, and this whole kind of sort of history. I feel like that does tie in very well to this film, because this film is about toxic masculinity incarnate. Men who behave without any understanding of the consequences of their behavior, taking what they want, exploiting women. And I feel like it is the perfect setting for this story, this kind of like cautionary tale, which is I think what this movie aspires to, or this fable about this man who finally gets what's coming to him.
Well, yeah, and we haven't even explained the third floor. Like at some point, well, actually, at a specific point, right after he has sex with Sarah the first time, the ceiling falls in on the second floor and reveals this third floor that no one was aware of before. And there's sort of this like gallery like viewing area. There's like a railing that sits above the second floor, so that presumably someone could look down and watch something happening from the third floor in the past.
Oh my God, I would have killed to be in this house in the 40s or 50s or whenever that was happening.
It looked like it was like the 1890s or the 20s or something.
I don't even fucking know.
Old.
You wanted to watch the child sex slavery that was going on?
Not the child sex slavery, but the
is that
one.
Even what it was? That was unclear to me.
Well, we do. I mean, we see like what is presumably a reenactment of what a typical scene would have looked like, and I'm
right,
like, kind of erotic to me.
It's Sarah, and I think Sarah reveals that she was the most beautiful, most popular, best, sexiest dancer of all time, and she was murdered, and nobody even cared or came and looked for her body or something like that.
Well, yeah, and I think the implication, because it's definitely suggested that like underage girls were involved in this whole thing. There are children's drawings in the third floor that he finds eventually of like weird naked men holding what are clearly intended to be children by the hand. So there's a lot of reference to underage girls. I think Sarah was supposed to be underage when she participated, even though like when we see sort of a hallucinatory reenactment of it later on, she's an adult, as she has been the entire movie.
Well, no, she's a ghost, so she appears as the age she was at when she died.
That's how it works.
Yeah, we wouldn't fuck with the laws of science on that.
The laws of science regarding ghosts.
Yeah. But all right, so let's back up, and I'm interested in what you alluded to about your interpretation of the queer thing.
Oh, I mean, just as like a screenwriting thing, it was such a jarring thing, because this is a small town, and you kind of expect. It just seemed very pointed to me that line was included early on, like, oh, straight couples don't fare well there. I'm like,
why do you think that detail? Why do you think that was even said? What bearing do you think that has on anything? It doesn't make sense to me.
I feel like it was purely intended to shock and give you that kind of like, small town sort of things are different out here sort of vibe. But then the bartender kind of turns around and says, he doesn't even say like the Seinfeld shitty line like, not that there's anything wrong with that. But the way he phrases it is sort of like he's totally accepting, but he's just curious. And because he's worried that like if he's not gay, he's in for a terrible fate.
Maybe,
but I'm like, why are we assuming that gay relationships are perfect and the infidelity doesn't happen in those too?
Right. That's a very good point, because
that's what bothered me.
I think it might be trying to say that, you know, most, if not all, marriages or whatever have like a unhealthy dynamic.
I don't think it's about. I don't think it's about the infidelity or the health of the relationship, though. I think it's about toxic behavior towards women in particular.
It is. I mean, ultimately, yes, because the ghosts
clearly
are female.
treats women poorly throughout the film.
Sure,
CM Punk's character treats women. It's not about infidelity necessarily. I mean, that's one facet. That's one way. That's one way that his poor perception of women manifests.
It's such a bizarre way to. I mean, again, the script is so like unfocused, but it is like such a jarring line early on, and it's such a weird fucking way to hint at like what is coming later.
You want to believe it's there
you
for a
would
good
never
reason.
guess from that line like what ends up happening and like what the what's going on in the house and with the ghosts and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree. It doesn't feel that needed.
Right.
I mean, it's sort of. I mean, it's almost cute in a way, in the way that it turns
term I'd use.
It turns your expectations of that scene and that line on its head, because you think that the bartender is some conservative old fuck who's like trying to give this guy shit for being gay, but it turns out that he's kind of just looking out for his well-being.
He's really
and is
trying
not
to be
necessarily homophobic.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I really. Yeah, they should have cut that out. I don't know. It's very awkward.
Let's get a couple of the other necessary spoilers out of the way, because essentially what happens is CM Punk just sees more and more creepy stuff. He's got his friend Milo coming over the house to help him. Milo gets killed by Sarah. The dog gets killed by Sarah, or Sarah's ghost if you prefer. And CM Punk ultimately... gets cornered by monsters and marbles roll up his flesh. And
oh my god!
He cuts himself up with a X-Acto knife.
Yeah, the marbles are really like a visual motif in this film. We see marbles so many different times. Whenever the house is pissed, it's kind of like the sign. And then the tooth girl shows up, rolls some marbles out. The marbles just like go under CM Punk's skin and travel up through his skin to like his jugular, and he's like trying to cut his jugular open with a fucking box cutter to get the marble out. Right. And it is horrifying.
They're very much like the scarabs in the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie.
Yeah. Then you're like, oh, that's the end of the movie. Well, no, there's this whole other act where the wife shows up in the flesh, as she's been threatening to do all movie. Shows up to an empty house, and this is the one part.
Threatening?
Well, she says she's going to do it. She's not threatening. I'm just using that loosely, but
just pointing that out.
So she shows up, and this was actually the point where I started to get invested in what was going on, because now we have a character who kind of has a clear purpose and it's like the bomb under the bed, because we know what's happened. We know the husband's dead. We know she's in peril, and she's naive to it all, and that was interesting. She's calling for Cooper and stuff like that. That was interesting to me. But then her kind of heroic arc it hinges on this scene with the church lady, where I guess she learns to stand up for herself in her marriage or something.
The church lady is such a weird character,
and such an interesting actress. Her eyes and her smile, I swore I'd seen her somewhere. She
seemed familiar, yeah,
even though I looked her up and there's nothing. But I mean, she is just like so intriguing and ethereal,
and the character is played in like also a fairly broad like comic kind of way, and again just kind of feels like she comes in from a different universe than everything else. Shows up very early in the movie as though she's going to be very significant to the plot, and I guess she sort of is, because I guess she enables what's her name, the character we keep referring to as the wife, which we may be making some of the movie's point for us by referring to her only as the wife because we can't remember her name. But man, that's a weird character. Like, she is both so, I guess, important, but also just seems so unimportant to the plot in the end that I'm like, why is she there?
I finally thought of an analogy that will probably make sense to no one else at this table for like how I feel about how bizarrely like loose this movie is and how I think it should have been tightened up. Like I record music. I've recorded our theme song.
He made our theme song.
I made our theme song, and I'm working on a
You're
spoiler
a
room
recording
theme.
artist.
Sure, you can say that. And I think about it like, you know, I don't have zero sense of rhythm, but like it's not great. And I frequently have to go through and like manually like quantize my takes of something, even when like I think of like this is the best I can do it. That means like actually going in to the wave files and dragging them into the time signature, like pulling everything, like if I
Chris and I have done this.
I know you have. And if I were to play, you know, drums is like the easiest thing because it's so clear in the wave file, like when there's a hit, and you have to like actually like go in and like fucking drag everything forward and backward to get it to be where it's supposed to be.
That's not music. That's not art. That's not jazz.
Okay, so how does this
That's how
connect?
I feel about this movie. I feel like it's every little bit of it is just like off time in different ways. And somebody should have gone in probably during the screenwriting phase and tightened it up a little bit.
Turn that jazz into rock and roll?
Yeah, so this is what's frustrating me, and you know what? It's like
we got Captain Beefheart, but we wanted the Rolling Stones.
There used to be real music, you know?
I'm sad whenever
Not
I
this
watch
CM Punk bullshit.
I'm sad whenever I watch a film that seems to have deliberate themes that it actually put some work into, and I just can't get them. Like, infamously, Cargo was one of those movies, and I don't know whether it's my fault or their fault, you know?
They should call him CM Rap.
And this is one of those movies for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a reason I gave it a Q it though, because I think it's like a really rich premise. It's not terribly well executed, but it is like, at least for me, I mean, for once.
Oh yeah, there's good stuff there.
It's awesome. Like, I wish I would have come up with this. I've been trying to write something that's very similar to a gay version of this for a while. And when I read that article in Fangoria, I was like, fucking goddamn it.
Yeah, I mean, a haunted house where the prostitute ghosts like take revenge on men for centuries to come. Great.
Yeah, man. Oh my god. You just saying that though made me envision like such a better movie than this.
Yeah,
but it's good enough. You know, this is the kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not. They didn't totally shit the bed. Like, it's a decent embodiment of that concept.
If this had come out in the 80s or the 90s, and I'd gotten it from the library on VHS when I was, you know, a kid and getting into horror movies and watching everything I can get my hands on, it would have left a mark on me. For sure.
It's probably, I mean, and actually it's probably left a mark on me, you know. I'm probably going to remember the fucking him slicing marbles out of his skin, you know. I'm probably going to remember every time I look at a fucking electrical outlet for the rest of my life, I'm probably going to think about the possibility of semen oozing out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, realistically, me too.
I mean, the shower comes on him.
Yeah.
Like, he turns on the shower.
It's Bukkake Central in
and
there.
cum just like explodes out of the shower head. Amazing.
And there's a moment where he gets covered in like what seems to be feces that for some reason is coming from the drain under the sink.
Oh, I thought that was blood.
I thought it was just tar or something. I don't know. It was black. It was black bile.
It was kind of a mix of everything. It was a potpourri of bodily fluids.
A potpourri, but I don't know. You know, so I'm wondering if that scene in the marriage counseling scene with Christian lady is somehow connected to the queer thing, somehow connected to the idea that maybe there's a feminist point in this movie that's making a comment on gender dynamics on the whole rather than specifically CM Punk being an asshole, etc. I don't know.
Well, because her whole thing is like that is what really baffled me about this movie, and I couldn't figure out what it was trying to say. But the church lady seems to have like kind of she's like got like a kind of like personal like battle with the ghosts in this house. And
well, yeah, she says she watches out for them and they watch out for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe we should just watch it again, guys, and do another episode on it.
I'm not going to watch it again.
Dude, I'd be down.
Cute.
Maybe we should do that sometime. Just like rewatch one of our.
You watch a cute ones. We could ask
one
our
of our
fans.
Movies.
Like,
yeah,
we could do a vote.
Oh yeah,
I
forgot we have listeners. Listeners, send us a line. Send us an email. Send us a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter comment. tell us what you thought and what you made of all these themes and everything. Or
no,
were
what
they
I'm
themes?
saying is like,
Well, we want you to do that every episode. This episode is not special.
but we want you to tell us: is there a movie you would like us to reevaluate? Is there a movie you think we got wrong, and you want us to watch it again and maybe set the record straight?
That too. Either or. I'm interested in hearing other people's takes on this movie in particular, because I feel like there's just a lot there, but nothing that I really was able to make sense of.
Second opinions.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many things we just have not even talked about.
We don't have to explain every scene in the movie.
I know, but I just feel like we missed so many like important things. The end of this movie just hits a just fever pitch of weird shit
It's
happening.
a fever pitch where you're like, you don't know who's dead, who's a ghost, what's real, what's not. It's all just kind of, I mean, it's, yeah.
We find Milo in the wall. There's a strangely erotic recreation of like what these brothel scenes used to be like.
Yeah, and there's a whole conversation
Sarah
about
in
why
there.
the men wear costumes and like...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's all weirdness. But anyway, you know, in the
There's
end,
a lot going on.
In the end, she delivers the baby, but CM Punk is the new ghost in the house, and I don't know what that means.
Oh, yeah, and you know what? I was shocked, honestly, that the baby got delivered, because there's even a moment where she like gets slammed into the banister of the stairs, and there's even a noise where I'm like, oh, she's losing that baby. But no, she's fine. Baby's fine. But then the final shot of the movie, and this is one of those typical, I always reference Nightmare on Elm Street to describe this kind of ending, but I hate this shit where it ends with like CM Punk's face like appearing in the vent above the baby.
Like, what does that even mean?
I mean, this is
He's like, is he one of the ghosts of the house now?
No, the ghosts are done.
Who is what?
He's the new, like,
Listen.
it's almost like the house was haunted from the time it began. Those ghosts are passe. They're over with, and now he's the ghost.
What?
That's what I took away from it.
I didn't take anything away from it. This is like, I feel like...
Wait, so you're saying the ghost killing him like allowed them to pass on, and now he's imprisoned in the house?
He didn't kill the ghost. His wife did.
No, I said the ghost killing
Wait, repeat it again.
The ghost killing him allowed them to pass on, and now he's imprisoned in the house.
Now,
It
where
wasn't him,
Milo
it was-
is, I don't know. But yeah, I think so.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think... You know, I think the movie doesn't have an opinion one way or
I'm
the
just
other. I
thinking
think
of
it just wants a weird, like, gotcha ending.
It's just feverish. It's like you can sense the coronavirus just setting in on the writer here. And it's like, it goes 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105. He's got 106-degree fever by the end of this movie. He's like, and then he's in the vent. In the movie. End titles. Fade to black.
I don't know. I mean, my takeaway, maybe I'll have to go on YouTube and watch one of those ending explained videos from...
Yeah, it did not seem particularly motivated or well thought through, like, why CM Punk is now in the vent.
It didn't either, but for some reason, I just assumed that, like, the old ghosts they've finally been laid to rest.
Interesting.
Wifey came in to kick fucking ass and get rid of those bitches, and that, like, somehow now he's, like, the new ghost in the house. What his motivation would be... Like, what he's going to do as a ghost, I don't know.
Maybe just watch over his baby, like Michael Keaton.
Why is he dropping fucking marbles on her, though?
He did not seem to be looking through the vent in a loving or fatherly way. And also,
the movie literally ends with a Wilhelm type scream of him grabbing the vent.
And also, like, the marbles, there's another thing that gave me cringe vibes, because this vent is directly above the baby laying on her back in the crib, and she does happen to have her fingers in her mouth, which I was like, thank God, because these marbles are dropping, like, right from the ceiling. I'm like, if this marble drops in the right place, it could choke this fucking baby. Thank God she's got her fingers in her mouth, and the marble won't go in there.
I mean, babies' skulls are pretty soft. I mean, maybe not at that phase, but like I
could
was
create like a wound like Milo's wound.
Yeah, no. So I don't think they were actually marbles. So she has a mobile that has all these soft, like, cotton balls or like wool balls on it.
They were definitely marbles, just like all the other marbles.
But they were like a solid color. They weren't like...
Dad was dropping
marbles. They were
out
the same
of
color and shape and everything as the marbles we'd seen all movie.
Yeah. I agree with Patrick again.
Don't gaslight me on these marbles, Steven.
I'm not going to gaslight you. I had a different... Because the first time I was like, holy fuck. Like, he's dropping marbles and there's a baby there. Rarely am I so sympathetic toward a baby in a movie, as we know.
Yeah.
But as I was watching it and I saw the mobile that's in the frame with the marbles dropping down, I was like, oh, they're like the same color and they don't seem like they're hitting very hard.
This is a very Freaky Friday kind of experience because you expressed deep disinterest in Cooper before, but you were worried about the baby. Usually you care about the animals and not the babies.
I mean, look, the baby in Cargo was like never in like direct peril. There wasn't anybody like trying to like stab it, you know?
What?
If somebody had like taken a knife and they're specifically trying to stab the baby, I'd be like, oh god, that's like...
I don't want to relitigate Cargo, but the baby in Cargo was in consistent peril.
It wasn't consistent peril, but not like... The peril wasn't directed specifically at the baby, but when I'm sitting there watching a baby, and it could have been a cat, it could have been a raccoon, it could have been a dog. If there's somebody dropping heavy marbles out of a vent onto a small creature, I'm going to cringe a little bit.
Dude, you know what? This reminds me of... I saw a video today of a hippo eating, and it's a horrifying thing because you drop... Like, they were dropping cucumber slices into the hippo's mouth and lettuce, leaves of lettuce. And the hippo... You know, a hippo has a giant mouth. It's just like hungry hippos. And it, like, chews on it, like it chews, and then opens its mouth for more, and you can see directly down into its throat when it opens its mouth, and the cucumber slice or the lettuce leaf or whatever is just sitting in its throat whole. Like the chewing has done nothing, and it's just sitting in its throat, like waiting to be swallowed, and the hippo's like, more please.
So it has the
was
impulse to chew, but
disgusting.
it doesn't actually achieve anything.
Yeah, it was disgusting.
Okay, interesting. Don't totally see how that's related, but...
Because that's what this baby thing has been making me think of. Because I just saw that food sitting in the hippo's throat, and it looked like, oh my god, it's going to choke on that. And I feel like that's what a marble would look like in the back of a baby's throat.
I wasn't even worried about the baby choking. I was just worried about the marble like hitting the baby's skull and making an indent that it's going to live with for the rest of its life. Or knocking an eyeball out or something.
You were purely your concerns were purely cosmetic.
You could say that. And you wouldn't be wrong. All right. Well, I think we've talked enough about this.
Yeah, I think we're gassed out if we're talking about cosmetic defects on the baby.
We're gassed out. We're risking gaslighting each other.
We're gassed like
apparently.
McGregor or CM Punk in the what do you call it?
In the UFC.
UFC, yeah.
Yeah,
oh man, that would have been a dank joke if I had remembered what UFC was fucking called.
Better that way. Better this way.
All right, so what are we watching next week? Patrick, you get to choose.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. I still haven't even decided. Okay, well, I'm going to decide right now. We're going to watch Green Room. Wait, have either of you watched Green Room?
Nope.
I have seen part of it.
I saw the trailer, and I was like, oh, that looks like it's good. I'll probably never watch it.
I liked Blue Ruin. I had similar problems with it, with that, to what I had with Girl on the Third Floor, but it sounds like this director just keeps getting better and better. I've heard great things about Green Room. Is it really in the horror category?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, because I would have thought.
And I would say it fits there. And I've seen this before. I should disclose. I've seen it before. I saw it in theaters. It got great reviews when it came out. I was not impressed by it. So it's kind of one of those things where you're just talking about revisiting movies. I'm curious because I want to see how y'all react to it, and if you enjoy it as much as like the general consensus seemed to react to it. And I want to see if I enjoy it anymore this time around. Basic premise is Patrick Stewart plays a skinhead leader who holds a band hostage.
A punk band, DIY punk band at their own sort of little compound out in the woods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting concept that really appealed to me when I first heard about it. And then, yeah, like I said, I wasn't super into it, so I'm curious to see if it moves a little more into cue it or view it territory for me this time around.
All right. Okay, cool. Excited. That's a very different kind of film. I don't know if we've watched anything quite like that for the podcast yet. Should be fun.
Yeah. Before we go buy our shit. We have t-shirts, you may have heard. You can also get our logo and shit on a like coffee mug and all kinds of other bullshit. Condoms, yeah, you know, whatever.
Sack wipes.
Whatever you need. Dipes. You go to every horror movie on Netflix.com where you can find everything else that you might want to know about our podcast and click the link that says merch store. And you can also find us on social media at EHMONcast, EHMON cast, and tell us what you thought of this movie, or if there are past EHMON movies you want us to revisit, or, you know, just if you want to say hi and tell us that you love us. We like that too. Oh, and also rate and review us and subscribe on your podcast
Please review us.
platforms.
I mean, even if it's just a sentence or two, it really does help.
We need that validation.
I don't know if we need the validation.
Well,
I want
okay,
the feedback.
I'll speak for myself. I need the validation.
I need the validation.
Me and Chris need the validation.
It's not just that.
Steven does not thrive on validation. It's good to be someone like Steven, but it's also good to validate people like me and Chris.
I want to give a very, very brief PSA right now, but this is super important. It's what every podcast asks you to do. But we don't have advertisers. We don't advertise ourselves. We're on social media. But if you really feel passionate about this show, if you've listened for multiple weeks in a row, even if it's 2, you're a fan. Say some very brief words about us, because it does help us to get into the ranks of, lists of podcasts on iTunes and all the other apps. It makes a difference. We'd really appreciate it.
Yes, yes, yes. We need your love.
All right. Well, this has been, once again, every horror movie on Netflix. We're fucking done with Girl on the Third Floor. We're moving on to the green room in 2 weeks.
We're moving up into the vents to look down on our baby and drop marbles on our baby.
I'm still trying to find that gull on the 3rd floor.
Might be looking for a while.
Yeah. Keep looking, Chris.
I can hear it. I can hear it.
As always, for every horror movie on Netflix, signing off, I'm Steven.
I'm Chris.
And that was Patrick.
See you later.
See you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.